I'm here with Jonathan Cuartas, the director and writer of My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. I think I already told you this, and anyone listening to the show knows I love this movie. One of the things that kind of excites me about it, and maybe you can tell me more about it, is that when I saw this, I was like, this movie is fantastic, but I'm probably going to be the only person that ever watches it, because it's kind of one of those, that's usually how indie movies go. But like going on Twitter or social media, like nowadays I'll see like top 5 vampire movies. This movie rears its head once in a while, so I'm pretty happy about that. What's kind of been your experience with the success of this?
Oh, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I do a podcast, because the film came out in 2021, but it has been, like what you're saying, it has been cool to see how it stood the test of time, at least for like a few years. I see it, it's still pretty consistent on Letterboxd, getting ratings all the time, and I see it on Twitter, and I see it still getting written about like the top vampire things. And that's always exciting because it is a tiny film and we didn't have like a huge campaign or anything like that, or a huge marketing thing. And it was very just like a grassroots approach, like podcasts like yours, or just people who are horror fans on Twitter, like spreading the word. And that's been the main thing to keep it like in circulation.
When we're trying to get together, you said you were working on some stuff. Like what's some stuff that has this opened any doors for you as far as like other filmmaking projects, or maybe getting some off the ground that you wouldn't have been able to get off the ground otherwise?
Yeah, I've been working on a new script for a few years now, and I was able to get representation off of this film. So that's been very exciting to kind of try to set up a project like the real Hollywood path, as you would say. So we're in development with some cool producers, and the strike put a little bit of a halt on all that. But now that the strike's over, hopefully continuing to develop and make my second feature soon. But as besides that, I've been editing a lot. I feel like it's been a few years, and that's kind of how I make a living. And luckily, I've been able to pivot from editing like pest control videos to narrative projects. So I've edited my third feature now, and the second one's currently, I probably told you about it. It's called Mountains. It's a drama film set in Miami, and it just played Toronto and Tribeca. So it seems to be doing well.
Is Mountains coming out soon, or do you not know yet?
There's no distribution deal yet, but it's making the rounds in the festival circuit. So hopefully someone snags it soon.
Yeah, it also well, I guess it's a short. Actually, you've edited a lot of shorts and directed the morning of. Looks like in post production, Compa, Lavi, Tiffy, Ludi, like.
Yeah.
Well, I actually Ludi's not, according to this, not a short, but like there's a bunch of shorts that are really great, but they're also not easy to find. Like, what's kind of your experience with those?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of them are still like Compa and La Vie are from the same director, Al Eakins Planchet, and he's a Haitian director from Miami. I've ended up working on a lot of Haitian films like Luzi, Tifi, even Mountains is a Haitian American movie. And so it's been very exciting to work in that diaspora and meet a lot of like talented Haitian filmmakers. But they are all on the festival circuit. The morning of, I'm editing as we speak, so that one's still in post production. But yeah, just waiting on distribution for those.
And what about your shorts, like The Horse and the Stag, Kuru, 12 Traditions, and Palor?
The Paddler, yeah, those are all older now, and that's how I kind of came up as a director locally. Was, well, my brother is a cinematographer, but he's very much like another director. He's a producer. He's like my right hand man. We've worked together, regular day jobs. Every single film that I've done, he's been on. So we started making these films like in between semesters in film school, and we would just like grab a camera and grab some friends and go make movies. And that's kind of how we started making things. And Kuru was my thesis film at Miami-Dade College. And that was what eventually became the proof of concept for My Heart Can't Beat. That was like a short version of the feature. And
Yeah.
we used it to sort of, we used it like a proof of concept along with the feature script to get the financing for the feature.
Yeah. How did that go? Like, just at the beginning, like, who do you go to? I
Yeah,
assume everyone that'll listen, but like,
that's a good
how do you shop it around?
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question, because we were at one point, it felt like we were kids in a garage band. Like we were sitting in our room, like, what are we gonna like? How do we even start? Like, who do we go? Because we didn't have any connections to Hollywood, or like I had no idea about executives and reps, and it was really just like me and my brother wanting to make stuff. And so we use that passion to get ourselves onto other projects, like not as director, cinematographer, but anything like PA, grip, assistant editor. And my brother had met this filmmaker, Kenny Riches, who he was a director. And my brother was like very consistently asking him, like, hey, let's meet up. I want to work on your next feature. And so my brother, I really credit him with getting our first feature made, because he was the one who made this relationship with Kenny. And by working on Kenny's feature as a gaffer and me assistant editor, we just got really close with him. And it turns out that he had a production company with his partner who was an investor, and they were the ones who ended up financing our feature.
This is something I always kind of struggle with. Like, how do you come up with a budget? It's like you can write a script and look at it. It's like, cool. What budget are you thinking?
Yeah.
I don't know. $3, 3 million. I have no idea. Like, what's the metrics and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's rough, right? It's like, because you can make a movie so many different ways. Like you can say, okay, it's $1 million movie and we're gonna have like cars on trailers and stuff. Or you could say we have $100,000 and we're gonna just make blood out of corn syrup. It just doesn't. There's so many routes, and for us, we knew that we were operating like between 100 and 200,000, so we had to keep our expectations at that level. And I feel like that also dictated the way I wrote the script. Like there's not a lot of characters. There's not too many locations. Like for the most part, we're in a house. And so it's also saying like, how do I work around this smaller budget? It's like thinking of it the other way. Like if I know the budget, then I can write the script around it, as opposed to the other way around. And I feel like that's the approach that we took. So even down to how we shoot the violence or don't shoot the violence, like how much of it do we show versus not? And I always say that tension and suspense is free, but special effects are not free. So if we can shoot behind a doorway, that will be cheaper, and maybe it'll be more effective anyway.
Yeah. And you got some great actors in this. Owen Campbell, and who's in since he's been in X and Candyland, which we saw, and that one was rad. Ingrid Tram worked with Paul Thomas Anderson, and Patrick Fugit, obviously, people know him. Like, what was it like getting them on board?
Yeah, it's crazy at this budget level. Like I feel so blessed until this day. I'm like, I don't know how. When I see like clips of the movie now, it's been long enough where I'm like, how did we get these actors like of this caliber? Because we could have just got local actors, which would have been fine, but to have actors at this level is just crazy. Kenny grew up with Patrick, so they were actually like really close friends in Utah, which is where we shot in Salt Lake City. So it was we had worked with Patrick on that other feature I told you about, where we were like assistant editor and gaffer, and we got pretty close to him, and I think he just liked us as friends. And so when he read the script, Kenny didn't tell him what it was about. He's like, oh yeah, just read this. He didn't say it was like a vampire thing or a horror thing. So then Patrick was reading it, and I think he really found it entertaining to be taken on that ride, because it starts with him picking up a homeless man, and he's like, okay, it seems like a nice guy. And then he hits him in the head with a bat and they drain his blood. And he just found it like, he's really funny, and he loves like the killing of a sacred deer and like these absurdist horror movies. So he was just such a fun time on set, like bringing the humor and the dark humor to all these scenarios. But after he came on board, my dream choice for Thomas the brother was Owen Campbell. Like he was like my first choice, because I had seen Super Dark Times, and he's just, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's really good. And we just reached out to his reps, and we were able to get him. And then Ingrid it was very like off the cuff. We were about to start shooting, and we had an actress for Jessie, the sister, and she had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. And we had like 2 weeks before shooting, and I was so stressed, because I'm like, if we don't have her, we can't shoot the movie, because she's in almost every scene. And so Ingrid like came in on the last second and saved the day.
Yeah, it's kind of a three-hander too. I mean, you need like sometimes with low budget movies, you have like the main character, and they're the ones that got to carry it, but like they kind of carry it as a family, which is also kind of the whole point of the story. You know,
Yeah.
how the family dynamic. So yeah, 2 weeks out, it's like I mean, we could just throw anyone in, you know, a warm body,
Yeah.
but you kind of for it to really work, you need that third, you need the Triforce, so to speak.
Yeah, especially for her because she's the one who's controlling this situation. She's like the leader of this pack. And so I remember I was at Walmart shopping for wardrobe and props and like doing Zoom calls like at midnight. I must have talked to like five different actresses before we found Ingrid.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of putting it together, like, and I don't know if you can even answer this, but like, there's a lot of like really, really suspenseful parts in this movie. Specifically, the guy in the closet towards the end. That's probably the best example because you know exactly what's going to happen. It's just a matter of how this is going to play out, and just kind of on the edge of your seat. But you've written this, you've thought about it for a long time. You shot it, like you start cutting it together. You watch it a bunch of like how do you know when you have a really suspenseful scene, and how does that not kind of lose its edge as it like comes to fruition to the point where it's like I think it works. I don't know. Like, does it just you just get numb to it, or do you just have a special thing in your brain that kind of clicks on like, nope, this is working?
Yeah, it's funny because I had an editor on this. Like as much as I edit other people's features in my own shorts, I knew that I wanted an editor on this feature because I wanted someone who wasn't on set to be able to tell us like this isn't working or this is working without the bias of like this was so hard to shoot so we have to keep it. Like
Yeah.
I don't want them to think about that. So we must have cut like 20 something minutes out of the movie and a lot of that was like pacing and I think a lot of it comes down to the cut. Like if you add 5 frames, it goes from being suspenseful to being boring, you know, or it can lose the tension. So it's really being specific about where you cut. And then I think it's just performance, like having Owen's face and Patrick's face and the kid in the closet is Judah. It it just all adds up. Like that's why I think casting is paramount because if you have the good actors like behind the camera, in front of the camera, I mean, then I feel like everything else comes together.
Yeah. And I guess just call out TJ Nelson is the editor.
Yeah.
Um, Now, so does that afford you the opportunity to just step away from it? All right, TJ, but throw this together. I'm just do what you want to do, and then you
Yeah.
can come back and watch it with fresh eyes.
You know, it's funny because on the features that I edit, I usually I do the first cut myself, and then the director will come in and we'll get to like the final cut.
Yeah.
But with TJ, I did the opposite. I sat with him right away from like right as soon as we wrapped. I think within 2 weeks, we already had our assembly, like our first cut. And I think it's because, as you notice, the film doesn't have much coverage. Like it's very simply shot. The camera is very still, and a lot of scenes are either one or two shots. And I already kind of edited it in my head when I was shot listing with my brother. And so I didn't really want to waste TJ's time if I knew like, okay, I want to use this shot for this part of the scene. But then there was also the flexibility of like the dinner scene where there's a bit more of like conversation and I would just let TJ take the wheel on that. So it was like a combination of being prepared with how you want the scene to play out, but also trusting TJ.
Yeah. And what about like the let's see who did the I got the IMDb open. The music, Andrew Reese Shaw.
Yeah,
I
Andrew.
so I was talking with another director who did the re-education of Molly Singer. We were kind of talking about music, like kind of how that relationship works between the composer and director, like how, and he's doing that for comedy, so it's really specific. How does that work in this instance with your relationship?
It's funny because Andrew, we were all wearing so many hats. Andrew was like in charge of our marketing efforts for social media. He was also the sound guy on set, like running the microphone and rolling sound.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was cool to have him on set because there is a lot of music in this movie that's integrated into the story aside from the score. So we had like the score that he made, and then we had the soundtrack, like the songs that they sing on karaoke. And it was all kind of integrated. So it was cool to see. It was cool to have him on set to kind of get the flavor of what we were trying to do. And it was really easy, honestly. Like we gave him a few references, and when he came back with the music, I swear it was like I gave him a few notes and we were done. Like it was just he nailed it, you know. And a lot of it was like, how do you keep the atmosphere like tight? How do you keep everything tense? And that's what the music was kind of helping with. It was a lot of pads and a lot of like simple sounds that would just like wash over the scenes, as opposed to very melodic score. I wanted something that was a little bit more subdued.
Now, does the music come to you like, hey, here's a couple tracks, and then you give the tracks to the editor and they put it in, or do they get like the final cut of the movie and kind of play along to the movie to kind of see how it flows?
In this case, it was like a bunch of different things. So the music that they sing in karaoke, we had to license it beforehand. And then on set, we had like these invisible Bluetooth speakers, and we would play them in their ears so that they could sing them properly. And then we would like add the music in post. But for the score, I remember I live in Miami, but I flew back to Salt Lake City to do just a pass. Once we had like a picture lock, I went to do a pass for sound and score. So I just sat with the movie and I started throwing on like different music cues, like, okay, here I want something, here I want something. And I would just like, it would be like Hereditary, The Eyes of My Mother, Blue Ruin, like anything that I liked. And I would just like throw it in there to give somewhat of a sense for Andrew. And then I sent him that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like how kind of the crossover between music and filmmaking, or just like all art in general, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, music has kind of ebbs and flows. I mean, you have your pop songs, which is verse, chorus, verse, but then you kind of go outside of that, and there's like certain bands can, like something like Between the Buried and Me or Pink Floyd can kind of take you on a journey more than others can.
Yeah, I love music. And I feel like that's one of my favorite things in films. Like whenever you could get me with a good story, good cinematography, good acting, but when there's a good track, like that you remember that, especially if someone's dancing or singing it, or even like killing someone to the song. It's very memorable. And I do that now. This latest script, I write like this song by this person plays. Like I already have like the dream playlist in my head with a Spotify playlist accompanying it. So when I'm writing, I'll play those songs. And my brother also has a degree in musical education, so he's very important part of the process when we're sound mixing. He's very good about saying like, oh, we should come in on the downbeat, or we should come in on like on this sound, or make it dissonant. And he's very like, I'll just talk about like feelings, and he's like, no, this is how you actually say it.
When you were talking about like writing a script and writing music into the script, does that get dangerous, you think? Like, if we're going to get around to shooting this and we're not going to be able to use that Rolling Stone song, but it's worked so perfect in my brain all this time, and now I got to think of something else.
There's always the thing of like, they say, don't get married to the temp music, because of course it's gonna work brilliantly if you have like Pet Shop Boys or whatever, or the Smiths. And then when you replace it with like something that's not that, you might get your heart broken. But I tend to write in songs that are not huge, they're like maybe deeper cuts, or like, for example, in this movie, we had I Am Controlled by Your Love, which is the 60s soul song that they sang like twice in the movie. And that was actually recorded in Miami. And we were able to secure those rights for fairly cheap, considering how good the song is. But it's just like finding those little loopholes.
And it also probably helps that kind of what you're describing to me is that everyone on the movie has worn different hats in the past, so y'all can kind of speak a similar language.
Yeah.
And then that ending maybe doesn't come together without that.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny this was his first like full project as a producer. He's a writer director through and through, so he was always on set. He was never like giving us pressure or making us feel like I'm the real director. He was always like having our backs. He kind of kept his distance, and sometimes he would like pop in and say something in my ear, and I'm like, that's very wise. Like, I know you, I could tell you've done a lot of movies. And so sometimes I would lean on him and I would say, hey, Kenny, I feel like we're missing a transition. What do you recommend? And he's like, oh, just shoot this. Like, he would immediately know.
Yeah. Also, so now that this is out, and we talked about its success, and especially as far as like an independent movie goes, do you feel like any sort of way about doing a new movie, like, oh crap, this next one better clear the bar that I already set, and we should have lowered that
Yeah,
bar. Or
that's
like,
what I,
or to the other point, could you get a wild hair up your butt and it's like, I just want to do a stupid B movie, like, just something just completely on the other side, but I don't know if like people that know me from this will accept that. Like, is there any sort of thing like that going on through your head?
it's like it's both of those things in a way, because the sophomoric slump everyone always fears, like, is this going to be as good? And I think what makes you feel so free for your first film is like you don't have any expectations, and neither does anyone else, because they don't know who you are. So you can just throw everything at the wall and just do whatever you want. And that's how we approach this. My brother and I were like, let's just go for it. Like, let's just like embrace our instincts, shoot it in a way that's maybe not conventional, tell a story, a vampire story that's more of a family drama. Like, we just wanted to throw all these elements where we were not really questioning. And now with my second script, I question everything, because I'm like, are people going to like this? Is it different from the first? And then I'm also trying to make a more commercial horror movie per se, with more scares. And so then I'm also fighting with myself sometimes, like, how much do I preserve of my artistic integrity? But then at the end of the day, I'm like, if I could just get to make a second movie, that's all that matters. And I also don't want to repeat myself. Like, I already made an art housey vampire movie. I want to make something scary. I want to make something bigger in scope and more commercial. I would love to make a B movie. I would love to make a Giallo movie. It's just fun to explore the full gamut of the horror genre without being like pigeonholing myself into saying, oh, I'm gonna make slow art house movies. Like, I already did that. Let's try something else.
How much of the audience goes in your head? Like, even with writing My Heart Can't Beat, like, how much of the audience is in your mind as you're writing, like, ooh, like the oh, we're the sister Jesse is sitting out in the parking lot as we watch Dwight go into the hotel room, like, and Jesse's just sitting there like watching everything. Like, I imagine like writing that the dynamics in that, going, oh yeah, this is gonna be a great scene. Like, once like it's gonna be real quiet, but everyone will see it and know what's up. Or like the scene at the end, again with the closet scene, like,
Yeah.
that's just gonna be like, how much of the audience goes in your mind as you're writing that, like, oh, this would be real cool, or if I was watching this, I would just be like leaping out of my seat going, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just go with your instincts, like you go with your gut and say, like, I know that you have to trust the visuals too. Like, there's not a lot of dialogue in this movie. And so it's like leaning on my brother, leaning on the people that are creating the world to make sure that everything works and that the suspense is actually building. I think even when I was writing this script for Heart Can't Beat, I was questioning a lot. And maybe it wasn't from the point of view of an audience, because I wasn't so aware of it as I am now, but it was more of a self-doubt. I think writing is like terrifying, and I'm always questioning and second guessing myself. But I think you just have to make a choice, put it on paper, put it on celluloid. Well, in this case, it was digital, but make the choice, because as I said, we changed a lot in the edit. And just because you shoot it doesn't mean that it's final. So, you have to start making choices at some point, and sometimes they work. People, when the kid comes in the house and Thomas gives him the cup of blood and he drinks it, I didn't know that it was going to work so well, but every time I've seen it in a theater, people always like tense up and they wince during that moment, and it feels great to see that.
Also, like with the title, which I think the title is what drew me to it. You could have called this movie like Blood or
Blood
Bleeding
Brothers.
or you know, something like that. But like I see a title called My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It to. It's real poetic and it kind of evokes like a certain emotion to me. And so I really gravitate towards titles like that. And I've heard other people say like the title's too long, blah, blah, blah. But we were talking about Joyride a couple days ago and how there's 6 movies called Joyride. So how do you find your Joyride? My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It to. There's one movie called that, and there will only
Yeah.
be one movie called. What kind of went into titling this?
I'm really like, I get really nervous with titles. Like, I never know what to call my films. And now it's funny because it's like the longest film title ever. But I love long titles like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I don't feel at home in this world anymore. That's actually lyrics from the 60s soul song that they sing. So the song's called I Am Controlled by Your Love by Helene Smith. And there's a lyric, my heart can't beat, baby, unless you tell it to. And we just thought it was me, my brother, and Kenny sitting on a snowy night in Utah. And we were just like, all right, we have to come up with a title. And we were just looking at the lyrics and we just thought it's poetic. It has to do with sacrifice. The theme is all there, sacrificing your life, your blood, you know, the themes of vampires and just being codependent. Like it's about codependency within this family unit. And this lyric, it's a love song through and through, but it has to do with familial love. And we were just drawn to it. So we went with it. Yeah, it's mixed. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I love the Jalo vibe to it. Some people are like, what the heck is this title? But it's fun. And it's the only one that's going to be called that. So
Did you get any pushback with the like, can you call it Suck or Crimson or like
no, it's funny.
did you have any alternate titles thrown at you or
no, never. It's funny, never in the process. Now that you bring it up, no one ever questioned it at all. Even the people, even the sales agent or US distributor, no one. They were always just down with it. I guess that's the novelty of an indie film, like a very indie film. No one's going to try to change your title.
well, we're gonna have to take away some of the budget. There is no budget. Oh,
Yeah.
then I guess you can keep it.
Yeah. Well, call it whatever you want then.
With the new one that you're working on, does title kind of match this in a way, or is it you're going for something completely different, or what can you tell us about the new one that you're working on?
So I'm also like, it's a working title. So as you can see, I haven't changed. It's still like the title's in Spanish right now. It's called Año Viejo, which means old year, but I know that it's going to change. And this one, we're trying to make it more of a movie that's going to play in more theaters and be more widespread. So we are like very aware that the title has to be a little bit more poppy, maybe one word, and I'm okay with that, but it's not going to be so long.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, Zoom's about to kick me out, so we gotta end this. I do want to ask the same question. We have the "What's in the Box" segment, and so I would like you to put a movie in a box, just a movie that's underseen that you really like and you wish more people would talk about.
There's this movie that I saw recently called Sick of Myself. And it's not, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's like a body horror, but it's super funny, super absurd. And the director now is making a movie with the Nicolas Cage movie called Dream Scenario with A24. But this is a film, I forget what country it's from, but it's from Europe. And the director's name's Christopher Borgli. And when I saw this movie, I thought it was like equal parts hilarious, disturbing as very absurd. Think of like Yorgos Lanthimos with body horror. that's
Yeah.
that's where I would put it. It's really good.
I'm looking up the director's IMDb. They just did a short called Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
I wonder what that's about.
He has an interview where he's getting interviewed about Sick of Myself, and he creates something that happens where someone shoots him mid-interview and he keeps getting shot. It's so funny. But it's just like that's the same sentiment he puts towards his filmmaking. Like he doesn't take himself too seriously. It's a really good time.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna check that out. Thank you for joining me today. And anytime you have anything coming up, let us know about it because we are fans on the show. Definitely hit me up once the next project gets rolling because we'd love to talk about that. And if it's not as good, we're gonna come for you.
Yeah, come for me. Thanks for reaching out, and I'm glad we finally got to do this. So for the next movie, we'll get together again.
Sweet. Favorite vampire movie? that's not My Heart Can't Beat?
That's a hard one.
I,
I want to.
I just dropped this on you like just now, but it seemed like an obvious question that I should have asked earlier.
I feel like my top three are Let the Right One In, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, just for being so innovative, and Thirst, the Chan Wook Park, because it's
Yeah.
just so fucking violent and weird and sexual. It's great, but there's so many good ones like Habit. I love Near Dark. I love Martin. I didn't watch Martin until after I made this movie.
Yeah. On the show, we watched Vampire, the old black and white one.
Yeah,
I love Nosferatu, but like it seems that no one talks about Vampire. And then I watched that going, wait, this wasn't made yesterday? Like
yeah,
it looks
yeah,
that good.
yeah.
But anywho, yeah, well, we'll talk to you later soon.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, have a good one. Thank you.